Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first session on the very first day of MSP University. Get your PhD in PipeGen. This is a 3-day event. We've got 9 different sessions spread out over the next couple days. And we're really excited to have you join us and take some time out of your day to be with us for each one of these sessions. If I kind of rewind the clock and I think about April 13th, 2020, and how far we've come to April 13th, 2021, it's probably like the longest 365 days most of us remember. Before we start this week's summit, before we jump into things, I'd like everyone to just take a moment and reflect on those we've lost. From the more than 500,000 friends, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, and loved ones lost to the pandemic, to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Dante Wright, and so many others lost to senseless hate and racism. We have an opportunity to affect positive change in businesses and in the world around us. And my hope is that in the next 365 days, you'll choose to do both. Each MSP virtual summit is a chance for us to bring the whole community together. For those of you who remember our epic Dreamforce party in 2019, and I'll be honest, like if you were there, there's a really good chance that you probably don't remember. These virtual summits are our best and closest approximation of the energy, passion, and community felt during Dreamforce. Over the next couple days, you'll have a chance to hear from some of the greatest revenue leadership voices in the world. They'll be covering controversial perspectives. There's going to be some fun anecdotes. And if we're lucky, there's just going to be a few Bruce Springsteen impressions. Beyond our great speakers, this summit wouldn't be possible without the help of our generous sponsors. And a special thank you to the teams at SalesLoft, ZoomInfo, and Spiff. There are strategic sponsors for this week's summit, and you're going to be hearing more from each one of them in the coming days. And finally, a huge thank you to Nora, Gina, Hannah, Taylor, and Elizabeth, the team behind the scenes at MSP. They're the best in the world at what they do, and we're all lucky, and I consider myself incredibly lucky to be in business with each of them. MSP wouldn't be what it is without the hard work that they put in and day out. Now, we've got 3 awesome sessions today, starting with this morning's panel on sales and marketing alignment, followed by an afternoon peer learning session, and then we're closing with longtime MSP champion and 2019 MSP Most Valuable Pro, SalesLoft's Jeremy Donovan, and he's going to be diving into all things forecasting. Now, enough from me. It is my great honor and privilege to introduce Marcus Knight. Marcus is one of the founding members of Modern Sales Pros. He's been a member for almost 5 years. He's a true luminary in the Seattle tech scene. He's someone I'm honored to call a friend and a business partner. He's also kind enough to volunteer his time to moderate today's live discussion. Enough from me. I'm going to hand it off to Marcus for introductions. Marcus, take us away.
Thank you, Rich. Pleasure to be able to moderate this panel. This is an amazing all-star lineup. My name is Marcus Knight, he, him pronouns. And yes, I'm the founder of Culture Perspective, which is a revenue go-to-market consultancy here in Seattle, Washington. And as Rich mentioned, I am a longtime Modern Sales Pro member, and I just love this community for all of the amazing insights that I'm able to get out of it all the time. So today we have some really great panelists that I want to first introduce is David Dulany with Tenbound. Hey, David.
Hey, Marcus. All right.
And did you want to give a quick background for the audience as far as like, why are you on this panel? Who are you?
Yeah. Well, I am the youngest in the panel, so I'm excited to bring that. I'm the founder and CEO of Tenbound, and we work with sales development programs to increase their performance and put out a lot of content for the sales development community over at Tenbound. And so I'm super excited to dive into this topic today.
Awesome. Excited to have you on here. And next will be Caroline Kinlin with Varonis.
Hey everybody, like Marcus said, I'm Caroline Kinlin. I'm Senior Director of Marketing at Varonis, and I work really closely, or try to at least work really closely with the sales teams and ensure that they, as my customer, get what they need for marketing to help them achieve their goals.
Awesome. And next will be Betty. Betty, how's it going?
Good. So I'm Betty Wetherell Gustafson, and I lead our business development team across the globe for Thomson Reuters. And I'm actually a long-time sales and account management professional. I actually have spent about 15 years on the sales side of the house, but the last 3 years have sat within marketing. So definitely have seen both sides of it and look forward to talking about that.
Great. And last but not least is Travis Henry.
Hey everybody, Travis Henry, super happy to be here. I lead SDR Ops and Enablement at a company called Snowflake. Past lives, I was doing a little bit of what David's doing now at Tenbound, doing consulting work for B2B companies and seeing how all different revenue teams either bump up against each other or figure it out together. So excited to talk about that today.
Great. So before we get started with our first question, just really quickly wanted to let the audience know that if you have any questions or want to chime in, we have the Q&A panel feature that you can actually write your answers or your questions in there, and we will try our best to get to them and have a great dialogue around that. So let's get started here. So my first question is going to be, why are we still talking about this? Why is sales and marketing alignment so damn hard? And I'm going to start with you, Carolyn.
Well, I think it's a matter of expectation setting, like understanding what our expectations are from sales and what their expectations are from us, and then communicating with each other. I think in our company, marketing might over communicate, might give sales too much to use, and it might be confusing. So I think it's just working on communication from my point of view.
And David, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, why are we still talking about this, and why is sales and marketing so damn hard to figure out? It's an evergreen problem, and I think if you look at it from a high level, the org structure that is in place from how we align the go-to-market teams is a sort of a remnant from 50 years ago when things were much more linear. And just especially in the tech industry, as the technology has pushed forward, we're sort of trying to fit a round peg in a square hole or whatever that thing is. We're trying to map our go-to-market org structure on an outdated model, really. And so when we think about the problems that we're still having, the silos that exist, they're really just sort of a remnant of the past that we're trying to still make work. And if you look at some of the more forward-looking companies, they start with the end in mind, which is the customer journey. And they sort of map their go-to-market team to optimize the customer journey versus trying to just set up their organization based on a format that is pretty outdated at this point. So it's sort of a high level way to look at the problem, but there are some ways that we can talk about that. Even if you can't completely reorganize your go-to-market team, that you could potentially use some, more forward-looking practices, and look at some of the companies that are doing this really well. With Betty and Travis and Carolyn have examples of those as well. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with what David just said. But I would actually add a bit more to it is, I think one of the challenges that we have is that our cultures are very different and we simply don't speak the same language. So, when I think of marketing, we say things like mass and funnel and ABM. And I think the sales team is like, what was all of that? And because they don't speak the same language, it's hard to be on the same page. And, it comes from a different background, a different focus, a different thing of what's important to drive revenue. And, I have to kind of laugh. A couple of years ago, I was invited to do some speed coaching at our annual sales meeting with the marketing team. And I was sitting at a table, and the marketer I was working with started talking about mass and ABM and content syndication. And the sales people at the table started looking at their phones and just completely ignoring. And I stopped and I said, hey everyone, I don't know if you know this, but I actually speak sales. And let me just translate everything Lisa just said. And, I said it jokingly, but started talking about, what's in it for us? What's in it for our customer? How will this help you be more effective and why we're aligned? And afterwards, there's a lot of jokes like, oh, glad you speak sales. And, since then, sometimes when we're in meetings, people are like, Betty, could you speak sales for a second? And, it's the same language, but it's not. And I would encourage everyone to remember that as we go forward, that it is important to talk both sides. And, we'll get some other tactic examples later on what you can do to improve that.
Preach, Betty, preach. I love it. If you have not hung a shingle on the side and consulted for companies to come in and be a marketing to sales translator and vice versa, I think you have an hourly rate you could charge for that people would be on board with.
It's a skill for sure.
But it's the sales and marketing gap. I think it's an evergreen problem, like David, you put it. I think that's the perfect way to frame it. Being a consultant, I think it gives you a lot of interesting perspectives because you get that kind of rapid fire in the room with revenue leadership teams, and you can see how the conversation unfolds. I think number one, there's still companies that the revenue leadership team is not in the same room. So literally they're just not having the conversation. And I think that's probably the first most basic gap. But for those that are giving it, the best college try, let's call it, in terms of coming together, talking about revenue in the funnel and trying to align sales and marketing, I think a lot of teams get caught in what I'll call the trap of what should we focus on, or what are the positive outcomes we want to drive, and just keeping the conversation around that. And of course you want to have that conversation, but it's the easier conversation to have. So yes, we want to grow pipeline. Yes, we want to take market share. We want to beat these competitors. In my experience, those things are easier to talk about versus the tough conversation of what are we going to agree to not focus on. And when you start to pose it that way, people get a little bit uncomfortable, but it starts to bring up where those real misalignment gaps are. And just an example of that, do we want to follow up on leads that are from accounts we've never heard about? If you're an SMB company, yeah, the answer is probably yes. But if you're an enterprise company or you're trying to go down an account-based path, you need to sit in the room and say, yeah, we're going to agree to not action those leads and to not go after them. And we'll cut our losses if need be. I think it's, it's similar to conversations in a relationship, right? With your partner, it's much easier to talk about, the fun trips you want to go on and all that good stuff versus, hey, let's budget X amount this month and not spend money. That is a much tougher conversation in my experience with my wife. So yeah, I think that's my best tip is, have the tough conversation of what you're actually not going to focus on. That's going to get you aligned.
Yeah, I like that approach a lot. Like having that tough conversation up front, it gets everyone on the same page. And then that way we know how to get to our actual goal. So really great insight there. We actually have a first live question from Mike DeGange. And Betty, this will come to you, but it's, hi there. There has been a lot of discussion for SaaS startups under 500 people around if marketing should roll up into sales as they scale through hyper growth or high growth. What is the team's thoughts on this?
That's a great question. We actually discussed that as a panel last week one day. And I think it's such a great concept of, what is the reporting structure? I can tell you I've worked under both. Earlier in my career, marketing did roll up through sales and then it separated. And I think the question is, how big are you? And I think that's really where it breaks is, I think for smaller companies, and in this example, a company under 500, I think it actually probably makes sense for them to be the same and to keep their goals aligned that way. But once you get into a larger company like Thomson Reuters and you're, $1 billion company, that's where you, I think it's more important to be focused on what is your function. Otherwise, you'll just get lost. It's simply too large. So I think it's going to go to what size you are. And I'd recommend if you're on the smaller side, it probably does make sense to be aligned together. Having worked in both, I actually think it was hard to work that way in a company our size. And, we did it for about a year before it was undone. and now we report up very specifically just through marketing CMO.
Yeah, I agree with Betty. I think it's helpful to have us a little bit separated, like we were under sales at one point, but it helps to have focus on our actual goals as marketing. But we still do need that alignment, because if our goal for marketing is to help sales achieve their goals, we need to at least be in the room where they're talking about what their goals are. And if that's not happening, then I think that's a big miss.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so if we were to go on to the next question, so in introspective, like sales, what do you wish what do you wish marketing would be for you, and then vice versa? Marketing, what do you wish sales would be for you? And we'll start with you, Betty.
Great. This is such a great question, and I think the "help me help you" is such a wonderful way to say it. Is that it really starts with let's assume positive intent, and the way we're going to get the best place is by doing that. But I actually think a critical piece is a role that I've played, which is that career switcher piece. I think in the ideal world, I would recommend every single marketing team hire someone who's done sales in that same organization, because I think the insight goes a long way. Like, it's really clear to me that I'm a little different than everyone else on the team, but I think that difference actually makes our marketing team stronger. For example, the content team might be like, "What do you think of this?" And I'll just start laughing. Like, that's not going to work. Like, those 8 paragraphs are not going to grab anyone's attention. And it's things like that where when you exist in a silo, I think it's easy for you not to see the other side. But when you have someone who doesn't exist that silo coming into it, it brings a really fresh perspective. So, if you are on the marketing team right now, I would tell you, hire someone in sales, give them a shot, and see how they can help you advance your own team.
I agree with that. So for me as a marketer, I wish sales would include us more in either sales calls they're having or discussions they're having about the accounts they're trying to get into. If we know that, then we can help target our messaging and our content and address the pain points they're seeing and the industries they're trying to go after. So I did hire somebody on my team who was in sales, and she really helped me get perspective on, when we're looking at sales tools to purchase, what will help the sales team and what the sales process looks like, so we can help them as they go through the process. So I agree with Betty that it does help to have somebody who understands the process to be on your team.
Yeah, I think that talent piece is super important, actually, and it just reminds me of something we're doing at Snowflake. For a long time, and I still see the SDR team as that connective tissue between sales and marketing. Typically, it needs to live, under one of those, but it is that connective tissue that, translates demand from one into the other. And something we've done at Snowflake that's super effective is we definitely have a strong sales career progression. So if you're an SDR, 70-80% chance likely you're going to go into our corporate account executive team and carry a quota and move on in your sales career. But we've made a very deliberate decision to promote SDR into those junior roles, particularly on marketing, but also in our sales engineering organization and other parts of the organization as well. And I think, if you think about who's having the most conversations with the market, with your buyers, who's talking to sales and marketing every day and doing that translation, it is the SDR team, in my slightly unbiased opinion. And I think if you can populate SDRs into your revenue functions, you'll be better off for it. So I think I love that point, and yeah, just a best practice I would adopt if you're not thinking about promotion paths in that way.
In our discussion, Travis, you mentioned something that I thought was really cool. You need radical candor. I was like, I love that phrase. Like, that's really, really awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for the reminder, Marcus. Yeah, I think if, I'm a operations professional reporting into marketing, supporting an SDR team. So I'm a little bit identity crisis with this question, but I think if I was to speak to this question as a marketer, I look at the sales team, what I want them to be is just a feedback loop for me, right? Sales is where kind of, you get truth in the process, right? The salesperson's talking to the prospect, they're running a deal cycle, they're pulling up relationships with your customers. I think we can pull a lot of data back to marketing and understand what's happening in our funnel. But I also think, I want the sales team to adopt an attitude of radical candor. And for those who don't know the book or the thought there, it's, being brutally honest in many ways, but coming from a place of, empathy, understanding, and wanting to support. And a sales team that can come back to marketing and say, not just say, hey, these leads suck, which we all have heard a million times, but let me tell you about what's happening in my region and why this particular message is kind of off base with my prospect account list. And here's where I think you should go after. And just having those really candid conversations. That's what I'd love to see from sales.
And David, just wanted to just see if you had anything else that you wanted to add regarding what you wish marketing would be for you.
Yeah, it makes me think about the thought of sort of leading by example. So I think at the best companies that you see out there that do this really well, the leadership, the senior leadership is forging the connection, and it's a strong priority to make sure that sales and marketing are getting along, and they're challenging each other, but they're able to work together toward one goal. And where I've seen it not work is, if it's not an overt, dismissal of either side of the fence, but it's sort of little comments and little attitude and little things that you kind of hear coming from the leadership of sales or the leadership of marketing, and it sort of permeates into those organizations, and they start to separate and have all the problems that you see. So if you're not in a leadership position, look out for that, because people lead by example. People sort of follow the lead that they're getting from their organization, and then if you want to get into this and become a leader, and look at it from a revenue perspective. And we were talking earlier about if it's a small company, where this can really work well is if you're just starting out, instead of setting up the silos from the beginning, just put one person in charge of revenue and have them build out the organization toward that one goal. And, obviously, if you're further along and the silos are already set up, be alert for the vibe, that's being put out by the leadership, and do what you can to address that, because that makes a huge difference. And then if you're thinking about getting into leadership, keep that in the back of your mind, that, that you really set the tone, and you can be, the organization's much more successful if we're working together and aligned.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense, and we actually are getting a lot of questions from the audience, so keep them coming. This is great. Question from Chris Bowen, and this will go to you, David, first. Do you think the roll-up of sales would change depending on the focus of your marketing effort, field versus content versus product?
I don't know what that means. Can you somebody else take that or restate it?
I can talk about that part of it. I think on our team we have a field team, a content team, and a product team, but the field marketing team kind of sits, not now, but they sit with the regional team, so they're part of their weekly team meetings, they're part of their goal setting. They kind of dotted line into the regional sales team. So I think for that part, it helps to have a close relationship with the regional sales teams as a field marketer, because that what their goals are decides what you're going to do to help them get to those, to reach those goals. And for the content and product teams, they sit under the marketing team, the CMO.
Yeah, I'll just add on a perspective to that. I don't know that I would change the org structure so much depending on the demand generation strategy itself, versus a reason we found to put at least SDRs under marketing at Snowflake is we've made the strategic decision where marketing as a whole is responsible for pipeline generation. And what that also does, interestingly, is it kind of overshadows the whole attribution question. Like, where are we getting pipeline from? Who has to generate what amount of pipeline? What we've effectively done is we've saddled the marketing organization as a whole with the responsibility of all pipeline generation for the company. And I think it's, that we're able to do that because our chief revenue officer, chief marketing officer are so well aligned and they work really well together. But that's kind of a strategic reason we found to say, okay, let's build our organization this way, where we've got pipeline generation on one side very cleanly. We've got, closing deals, expanding, renewing customers on the other side. And we're able to kind of divide responsibilities, which has actually reduced, I think, friction between the organizations. So just kind of another take on that question and a different way to think about your structure.
Yeah, and you could see, like, even that example that we gave, where if you flip it around and you set up the go-to-market strategy based on the customer journey, you're not, you can just blow up. I mean, you could blow up the titles. It's what will help the customer from discovery, and then getting in front of a salesperson to closing a deal and then becoming a raving fan. What will push that journey forward versus, this is what I do. I'm like, imagine if you put a content person who is not aligned with that whole process, and they're delivering content back to the salespeople. And someone gave an example of that. It's just like, what the hell is this? This doesn't even make any sense at all, in this context. So just something to think about.
And we're getting some great questions coming in, so we'll keep moving, and this is really awesome. I have a quick hot take that I will point to you, Carolyn, but let's see here. Should SDRs report to sales or marketing?
We're actually trialing this, where we're going to have a team report to marketing and a team report to sales. I think in terms of following up on leads, it might help that they're in marketing, but if somebody wants to move up in a sales, sales role, they're going to want to be on the sales team. So there's a progression that they can see. So we're actually trialing this to see. We're doing an A/B test to see which one works well.
I love that, Carolyn. In fact, when you say you've done an A/B test, we kind of also did an A/B test. And right now I lead the COE, where we've actually pulled people in from both sides and have looked at, are you more successful if it's in marketing or in sales? And we have found it's more successful in marketing, but perhaps not for the reason you think. I think one of the biggest reasons is we found that when it sat in sales, it was too easy for sales then to grab those people and move them into be sales professionals, which is exciting for career, but it makes it so the leads are always secondary to career development and career growth. And one of my teams came from the sales group, and they were seeing like a 3 or 4 month turnover before they were hiring them into sales, which is great for sales, but the marketing leads never got the attention they needed to flourish.
Right.
When it sat in marketing, I think those people are still going to sales. In fact, 80% of our team, that's still their next step, but it's a slower next step, and it makes it so that both functions get the attention they need. So from my perspective, I believe it should sit in marketing to ensure that the marketing leads are getting the attention it should get, but the partnership should be with sales to ensure that they'll still take the team. And again, so far that hasn't been an issue.
Another question coming in from John, and Travis, we'll start with you, but how does everyone feel about how compensation structures play into motivation between sales and marketing? Is this also too siloed and not reflective of direct impact on revenue growth?
Love that question, John, because I don't think it's talked about enough, frankly. And I'm going to particularly talk about the marketing side. So I think sales has the most aligned compensation plan possible, right? A huge part of the sales strategy in general is how do you structure a comp plan? How does that drive behavior? That's very much focused on driving, ACV for your business or revenue outcomes. But on the marketing side, I still see most marketing teams, on a bonus plan. It's a small piece of their pay, and it's mostly, goal oriented in terms of how that bonus plan is structured. I think that works for a lot of marketing, but particularly if you're in a demand generation function, if you're on an account-based marketing function in particular, I would love to see a pipeline generation quota with a little bit more aggressive of a variable. And that's how those teams, make their OTE. I would love to see that. I haven't actually seen a company formally adopt quotas around pipeline generation for their demand generation folks. I think that'd be super interesting to see how that played out.
And David, do you have anything different or similar that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I haven't seen that either, but if you think about it, we're all, working toward the same goal. And sales has been on a variable commission for, variable comp plan forever, since the beginning of time. But it's sort of an electronic third rail if you try to go there with the marketing side. There's just a lot of resistance that comes up. So it's, on one hand, it makes perfect sense theoretically, but if you ever try to bring it up or get people interested in it, you just get a lot of pushback. So I haven't seen anybody pull it off. I'd be really curious if anybody on the webinar has, or there's some success in creating variable comp for the marketing team, but it's mostly been bonuses.
And we are getting a lot of questions. This is great. So, I'm going to go to the next question. I think it's from Chris Guthrie, and I'm going to try to paraphrase here, but works in a very context-heavy industry. Let's see. The marketing team has great skills in their area, but very little industry knowledge. How do you facilitate like a meaningful cross-pollination? And how have you seen effective knowledge transfer between sales, AM, and marketing?
Marcus, I would love to take this one.
Yep.
This just makes me laugh, as when I came over to marketing, I think this was a really key problem. And so I want to just share a tactic here rather than to give advice. And I will tell you, if you have the energy, this is the best way to resolve it. And that is to create a call library. But the call library needs to be at the very beginning extraordinarily planful. And when I came over from sales to marketing, I kept thinking, like, do you really want us to use that script? Why don't you hear that script out loud when it plays to a customer? And so we actually created a call library, and we share calls every other week. And we share calls across different buckets. So 1 week it might be on a line of business. It might be on a negotiation. It might be on whatever topic is needed. But it has opened the eyes on both sides. I can tell you that the marketing team, they're saying things like, wow, that did not resonate. Wow, like your team needs more information to talk the talk. And on the sales side, they're saying, oh, you are doing what we asked you to do. Oh, that was a helpful call. And I can tell you, every other week when I send out the calls, we normally send 3 calls out. Somebody responds and says, wow, that was painful. Now, at the beginning, I pulled the calls where I felt like things we needed to change. So there was a script I was really unhappy with. And so that was the first series, so that they could see, and to your point, how do you share that knowledge transfer around the context? I think they were quickly able to see that wasn't going to resonate. And so what we did is we actually, then the marketing team went back to the sales team and said, hey, this didn't resonate. Could you give us some tips on how it might next time? And it actually became a working session between the two of us. And then we played that call the next round to show that it did work and that it did resonate. So a great tactic. Now, the hard part is going to be, where do you get the calls from? And how do you keep them current? So we actually run it as a contest. And we ask the team to submit the calls. And then the best calls get prizes. And then sometimes we save the calls for the next time. So how we keep our calls current is by bribery.
That always works.
Can I add on to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Betty, what you're hitting on of, spiffing or gamifying the calls, it's a golden idea. And we've taken that even a step further. So we have our SDR Hall of Fame internally at Snowflake. So it's not just, hey, submit your best call, but it's, look at this 12-step account-based sequence that I made for this Fortune 500 company that's vertical specific. And you'll get these light bulb moments as you show that back to the marketing team of like, wow, like how compelling is that? Like you're dropping, a quote from their executive team and you're tying it back to our value proposition around this vertical. You can expand it to, individual email templates, snippets. I would encourage everyone to adopt that. So just +1 to that, Betty.
Yeah, Marcus, really quick. When I look at that question and it's like, how long has the marketing team been on, working on this? Because, you have to take ownership of your expertise of the marketplace that you're going to be calling on. And you can't just, shrug off you have a duty to learn about the marketplace and become an expert as fast as you can, because that's super important. You can't just like stick your head in the ground and not learn about the market. And you've got to take ownership of your own education. Otherwise, if you're delivering material that isn't relevant to the sales team, you're going to lose credibility pretty quick.
I think it also helps.
David, is that I think they think it is relevant. Like, I think they thought, we've done our research, we have our experts working on it. And it's not until they hear it and they see the customer's response. In my example, we were contacting IT and we weren't, my team wasn't prepared to have that kind of conversation, which then made the marketing team say, oh, wait a minute, maybe the content wasn't correct. I think the reason this is an issue isn't that there isn't the goal to give them what they want, is that they think they are serving it. Again, going back to where I started, which is the benefit of needing that cross-pollination. And if you can't get cross-pollination, a sharing that could result in a better feedback loop.
Exactly.
Yes, I think this is a great segue into a question I have, which is, tactical challenge. One thing we can start doing tomorrow to improve alignment between marketing and sales. We all know that we want this to be done, but like, where do we actually start in this process? And we'll kick it over to you, Travis, first.
I love this one, and also shout out to Modern Sales Pros for always bringing it back to the tactical. What can we do today, tomorrow? How do we get started on this stuff? My hot tip here is for the marketing teams out there. And the litmus test is, can a marketer on your team pull up a current and out quarter pipeline coverage report in Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever CRM you're using and tell a story about what's happening in terms of that pipeline and where there's risks in it, where it's healthy, et cetera. Something we've done at Snowflake that I just absolutely love is anytime our marketing team's giving a presentation back to a cross-functional group, they literally start with, here is the pipeline coverage. Q3 is looking really healthy, for example, but Q4 we have a sharp drop off, and it looks like that's actually in this region and for enterprise specifically. And that's their lead in to literally talking about marketing strategy, talking about marketing tactics, and just the fluency around, running something fairly simple like a pipeline report can be really, really powerful for starting to get that alignment between marketing and sales going. And also that story is going to resonate with your sales audience. Back to what Betty was talking about. Pipeline coverage is the language of sales. It's what they're thinking about every single day. If you can frame your conversations that way, you're going to kickstart your journey to sales and marketing alignment.
Great insights. And before we have the rest of the panelists chime in, just really quickly wanted to let the audience know, please keep sending in your questions. We're going to try to answer them as they come in. Some great questions have come in already, and we want to keep that going. I'm getting a lot of valuable information, so I'm glad this is being recorded. Betty, so the questions to you. One thing that we can start to do tomorrow to improve the alignment between marketing and sales.
Yeah, I mean, I think my big message all along has been, you need someone who knows both sides. Now, not everyone has a team large enough that you could hire, a salesperson to be on your marketing staff. But everyone could bring in a subject matter expert Now, a mediator makes it sound like we expect it to be a fight. Sometimes it is, but really it's someone who understands both sides. Now, that might actually sometimes be someone who sits in operations. I could see Travis being asked to play that role, or someone who might sit in finance, or someone who knows both sides, that both sides trust. So if you have an idea, they're like, yeah, that works for me. And then that middle person can say, yeah, that will work for you. So, I really think understanding each other's perspective in one way or another is the way to do it.
And David, to you, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so it's easier said than done, but there's got to be a service level agreement between the different silos, and it has to be enforced. And so that's why I say easier said than done is, as an advisor or consultant, when you come in, you go, hey, make a service level agreement, make sure everybody's on the same page and someone's enforcing it, and then you leave. But the hard work comes, in the consistent project management across the different silos and enforcing the service level agreement. And so what does marketing agree to provide to the sales development team? What does the sales development team agree to provide back to marketing? And if someone violates that, is there someone in charge of going back and saying, hey, you didn't do what you agreed to? Simple to say, very difficult on a daily basis to execute. But really, if you think about it, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but at least it's an agreement that everyone can stamp and look at to say, this is what we all agree to be doing. So.
And Carolyn, question to you.
I think, well, we're starting to do this at Varonis, but we have regular, either weekly or monthly stand-ups with a quick meeting with marketing, business development, and sales, where we agree on what are our goals for this week, like what are we going to set out to accomplish, and then agree like who's going to do what, and then check in with each other on the next meeting with how we achieve that. We also have something that we call a prospecting committee. It's also people from sales, business development, business ops, and marketing, where we talk about the messaging, what resonates with the customers, what works for the sales teams as part of their engagement and their meetings. And then marketing helps craft those messagings for them. And we ask for feedback from them. So from the sales teams, like they'll say, this doesn't work. It sounds like too much like marketing. Nobody's going to read this. So we like that feedback. So I think it helps to have those open lines of communication and be willing to accept critical feedback, good or bad.
That is a very important part, the critical feedback. We have an anonymous question that came in. What part do you see technology playing in facilitating such feedback loops between sales and marketing? And we'll start with you, Betty.
Yeah, at the beginning part, feedback is feedback, and all feedback is valued. And if it means that you pick up the phone and call someone, fantastic. If it means you email someone, fantastic. The problem with those methods is that they're not sustainable. You get a piece of feedback today, but you can't look at it a year from now and wonder, did this work or did it not work? Hey, that campaign, was it successful or not? Let me look at my emails. What I would encourage people is some feedback is better than none. So if that's all you can do, then do it. However, if you can use technology, you're going to be better for it. We've recently moved towards putting our feedback in a specific comment section in our CRM system, so we can go back and look at it in future state. Now, I'm not going to lie and say it's amazing. We're challenged in getting things logged the way we want them, but even that small amount of logging will make it to a year from now where I can go back and pull it if I choose to. And so for sure, if you can use technology, all the better, but know that all feedback is welcome and needed, no matter what it looks like.
Yeah, I can, oh, go ahead, Caroline.
Well, we started trying to use more technology for that kind of thing, like notes and CRM. We have a marketing notes field, we have a sales notes field. In HighSpot for our content, we ask for feedback that way, like this didn't work as a pitch, we're gonna try something else. We use SalesLoft for our outreach and engagement. We get feedback that way, and also we're able to see its success, as it relates to what's happening in Salesforce. So I think it's important to have the technology if you can use it and roll it out.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. I think going back to David's point of truly mapping a customer journey and then understanding what are the potential points, someone's going to fall out of this or not proceed, and what are those junctures, and then, really defining those and coming together as a sales and marketing team and saying, what are the reasons we hypothesize that someone could break down out of this? And just a really tactical tip, right? Pick list fields are your best friends. Free text fields are going to screw you over in the long run, more often than not. And then, and just another tangible example, is marketing generating demand in the right places? It's kind of a fundamental alignment question. And just a very pointed piece of technology I've long been an advocate of is lead to account matching, and specifically lean data for that purpose. And one way we use lean data is literally our marketing team comes back when they're reporting to us. There's a stacked bar chart in terms of all of the leads that they generated, what percentage were matched to accounts that are assigned to account executives that frankly we care about, and what percent aren't. And we can start to see this trend of, hey, we're actually pretty off base in what we're doing in this region. Let's talk about how we fix that and start to grow that over time. And to Betty's point, super measurable, super easy to keep track of, and scales very, very well. So that's just one way we're using technology for that.
And David, I have a question for you. Is there a formula to how many meetings SDR should be booking versus marketing for lead gen?
I don't know of a set formula. I would just start with what the revenue goal is, and usually how long it takes to close a deal, and then build the pipeline number back from there, and then figure out how many meetings it takes to hit that pipeline number. And if you're getting, what percentage you're getting of those from an inbound lead versus, the outbound SDR function, and just build it back from there. You could do that pretty easily in a spreadsheet. You don't need anything fancy to do that.
Yeah, in my experience, that's what it's been. We work back from whatever our revenue targets have been, and then you kind of, there's no like real magical formula. It's just a lot of A/B testing, trial and error to get to that.
Yeah, you probably need more. Whatever answer that you come up with, you're going to need more, right? You're going to need more tech, more resources, more lists, more people, stuff like that. But you got to just start with what you have and the goal that you're trying to hit. The other thing that Travis made me think of is, and I mentioned it before, but a lot of people are like, how do I really excel with my sales development program, and really in the whole alignment that we're talking about. A lot of it does come down to really solid project management skills, because where you see it fail a lot is people are just doing campaign after campaign and thing after thing, and they're just sort of running on a treadmill, and they're losing all the learning that's coming back, and the feedback, and being able to recalculate, and just consistent improvement, because there's no one who's really good at managing the project and putting that circle of feedback back in to improve consistently. And so just one thing, when you think about technology, how good are you at using Asana or Trello or Monday or those type of things? And then reporting that consistent improvement back. It's definitely something to think about, as you're looking at different technologies.
And we're going to go to Travis with this question, and then we're going to flip it back around. I want to hear from you first, but what has worked to create a sense of urgency with marketing to get them to move at the same pace as the sales force?
A little bit of an unfair question that assumes marketing is moving at a slower pace already, but okay, let's assume marketing is a little slower and less urgent than sales. I think the biggest way to do this actually goes back to funnel math in a sense. So what I mean by that is, when we need to generate demand on the marketing side, it feels like the requests that come in from sales, it's like, hey, we need pipeline tomorrow, we need more meetings, we need more X outcome. The reality of the customer journey is that it's not that fast of a feedback loop. So in a sense, you need to speak with marketing in a timeline type of horizon. And what I mean by that is, okay, if we need more pipeline, right? What is our average sales cycle? For our average sales cycle is 6 months, and it usually takes 2 or 3 meetings to generate an opportunity, and it takes 30 leads to get to those meetings. Those leads generated today aren't going to do anything for what sales is asking until 6 months from now. So you actually need to plan with that latency in mind, right? And you need to actually staff SDR headcount with that latency in mind and really orient the conversation that way. So what's going to be urgent in 3 to 6 months is actually urgent today from a marketing perspective. And I think that's a way that you can kind of, again, if the marketing team's less urgent, pick it up a little bit.
Now, conversely, Betty, let's say that it's the sales team that needs to pick it up a little bit. How would that work?
The sales team never needs to pick it up a little bit. I can assure you, if a lead is available, they're going to grab it and run. I think Travis just answered that so perfect. It's actually hard to add anything. But what I can tell you is this, in my experience, is that we actually are moving at the same pace, but it's the perception only. And, when I was telling you about how I speak sales, something I didn't realize was, that came up at a meeting where the sales team was like, you guys said you have all these ads. I never see those ads. Obviously, it's because you're slow to get them in market. And I had to respond, you don't see the ads because we blocked you from seeing them, because we don't want to pay for you to see them. We want to pay for our customers to see them. And the sales team was like, what? It was like a totally new perception. And then when we shared and said, actually, these are the ads, this is who saw them, and look how many there are. And when they saw that, it was a completely different perspective. I mean, Travis is right. A lead takes a while. But the reason there's that perception that marketing is slow is you don't know what's happening in the background. And I just want to make sure that, if you believe it's slow, find out why. It's probably that you're just not seeing the sausage being made.
I agree. And I do think that marketing and sales are probably moving at the same pace, but we're right now for me, it's 2022. I'm planning ahead so that by the time the sales team needs what they need, they already have it. When I start talking to you about a campaign I'm going to run in October, you're like, I don't care about that now because I'm working right now, but what I'm doing for October is going to help you in October. So I think we're running at the same pace. We're just in different lanes. So you can't tell where, that we're actually just as urgent as you are, just in a different way. And we do the same thing. The sales teams are like, I think we should have a television ad because nobody knows about us, or we should have a big banner at an airport. But we are running ads. We are running them to their accounts. Their accounts are seeing them because we see what's happening with them. But you're right. We don't want to pay for the sales team to see it because that would be such a waste of money. But it helps them to see that so that they know that we're trying to help them.
Yeah, I gotta say, I know that there's probably a lot of salespeople on the call, so no offense, but marketing has it tough in that everybody in the company is an expert in marketing. Everybody, and so and it used to be when we were in office, but you're sitting there and everyone's coming up to you giving you marketing ideas, and you're just like, really, But whereas, if you went up to a senior engineer who was writing code and started telling them how to do their job, it would just be hilarious. So anyways, that's just a side note.
No, I love it. I think you're absolutely right. I feel like marketing always gets the front end of the stick in regards to, why don't we have more leads faster, all these things. It's like, hey, they're working very, very hard. You just don't know all the things that are happening in the background.
I mean, imagine a marketer coming up to you and giving you sales tips on how to close deals. I mean, you would just laugh them out the room. I mean, unless they had been a salesperson before, but I just think it's hilarious.
Okay, this has been just phenomenal. Thank y'all so much for all the insights, and believe me, I'm going to take a lot of them back and use them. But with the remaining minute here that we have, just wanted to get the last thing out of the way, which is in a tweet length or less. What is a key takeaway that we can give to our audience? And I'll start with you, Betty.
think I have to go last. I can't think of a tweet takeaway without it going extensively. So
That's fair. That's fair. Caroline, do you have anything here?
I'm gonna steal Betty's initial thing. Get a translator for your marketing and sales teams to help with communication.
Love that. That's so good.
Yep. And Travis?
Mine is alignment starts with what you're going to agree not to do versus what you're going to agree to do. A little controversial tweet for you.
And David?
Great. Something like everyone is in charge of driving revenue for the company. Everyone is in charge of that. Just keep that in mind.
And Betty?
yeah, I'm going to go back, and it's not going to be tweet length, but I would tell you, you know, that feedback loop is the only way you're going to understand each other. And whether that's call listening or feedback, it's the only way.
And for me, constant communication, like you all hit it all, like constant communication so that we are better aligned. And
Wow.
I like it.
That was awesome. Hanging out in the background, just listening to you all jam. Betty, Carolyn, Travis, David, thank you all so much. A couple first timers in the crew, which is always exciting to bring in amazing new perspectives for that. So thank you all so much. Marcus, as well, man, really appreciate you moderating here. You did a phenomenal job. For everyone, I'll say this now, this I think was the most questions we've ever gotten on an MSP event ever. So kudos for the stimulating conversation and really great topic. I know you're all incredibly busy. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective in our first session of MSP University, brought to you by all of these amazing organizations. For those of you that are still hanging out online, we're going to be hopping into our leadership roundtable. That's our next session that's coming up early this afternoon. You can see the full summit agenda in the chat panel. But Marcus, Betty, Caroline, Travis, and David, on behalf of all of our attendees here today, the team behind the scenes, the folks watching this in the future in YouTube, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. Please stay safe, and I look forward to having each of you on again. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for kicking us off so strong. Take it easy, y'all.